I never anticipated that a single loaf of bread could shatter the armor around my heart. Yet it did the very first time I saw him under that wavering street lamp. The city's rumble dissolved as our eyes met, and I felt an electric jolt that made my palms sweat around the warm crust in my hand. In that instant, everything I believed about kindness, fate, and the fragile line between them unraveled. Each evening at exactly 7:17 p.m., I stepped off the bus, clutching a fresh bread roll wrapped in wax paper. Neon lights shimmered in puddles left by rain, and the quiet streets swallowed the usual city chaos. My footsteps echoed, a reminder that I was walking into a place I could never quite explain. Maple Street was his corner. A bent figure sat wrapped in threadbare blankets, knees pulled to his chest. Beside him, a dented tin cup caught only wind and dust. Long before I reached him, something inside me clenched, a conscience too heavy to ignore. Guilt rushed in every time. Why had I walked by so many nights blind to him? Why had it taken me so long to see? My warm home and steady meals suddenly felt like undeserved luxuries when weighed against his reality. Kneeling, I unwrapped the roll. Its warmth rose in the cold air, and when I extended it, his gaunt hands trembled before closing around it. That first night, he flinched as though expecting pain, but the bread's softness calmed him. When he finally bit into it, I saw his eyes flicker with something ancient: relief, disbelief, gratitude. Watching him chew slowly, I realized how much power a simple act held. A reminder that someone cared. When crumbs remained, he tucked them carefully into his pocket, as if saving treasure. He whispered, "Thank you." Just 2 syllables, yet they echoed through my chest long after I walked away. That night, my mind replayed every detail: the hollow under his eyes, the tremor in his fingers, the sharp ache in his voice. My life had been routine, unfeeling. This moment cracked something open inside me. The next day, I arrived 10 minutes early. My pulse raced. My bread felt like currency more precious than gold. He was there, waiting. This time when I pressed the roll into his hand, he didn't eat right away. He looked at me, eyes wary, but hopeful. "It's yours," I whispered, and something shifted between us. Slowly, words entered our ritual. His name was Samuel. He had lost everything in a fire 2 years earlier. Once he had painted murals across storefronts, strummed guitar on weekends, and dreamed of a small home filled with music. Listening to him reshaped the picture of who I thought the homeless were. He wasn't just a man on the curb. He was a survivor, a dreamer still holding on. His quiet dignity humbled me. He never begged loudly, never demanded. He only existed in silence until I stopped. As days turned into weeks, I felt myself changing. My work meetings blurred as I thought of Samuel. I bought extra food deliberately, eager for our nightly exchange. My once comfortable apartment now felt empty without that ritual. One night, the cold was unbearable. I carried tea in a thermos and a wool blanket from my closet. When I draped it over his shoulders, his eyes filled with tears. "You shouldn't," he whispered. My throat tightened as I replied, "But I will." The winter worsened, but our bond strengthened. I shielded him with tarps during rain, left lanterns to chase away dark corners, and sometimes just sat beside him in silence. In return, he began leaving me small tokens: a painted pebble, a stitched cloth, a note scribbled on cardboard. Each gift felt like a vow that our worlds, though different, were linked. Yet I built a wall I thought kept us safe. I was the giver. He was the receiver. I never let myself imagine what he might offer in return. That dynamic became my armor, until one night it shattered. I arrived carrying extra bread, socks, and tea. But Samuel wasn't seated as usual. Instead, he was kneeling, holding something wrapped in old leather. His hands shook as he extended it to me. My chest tightened when I felt the sharp imprint of a key hidden within. The bundle was heavy with mystery. Samuel's eyes burned with an urgency I'd never seen before. I stand frozen under the flickering lamplight, clutching the mysterious key as Samuel's eyes burn with a silent urgency. Every step I've taken to help him has led to this knife-edge moment. What door will I unlock tomorrow? And what price will I pay for accepting a stranger's secret? The city hums around us, but my world has narrowed to one question. Am I ready to cross the line I once swore I'd never approach? He didn't open his mouth to ask. He handed me something wrapped in cloth. The sudden weight of it in my palm felt like the whole world shifted off its axis. In that instant, every certainty I'd clung to dissolved, leaving only the pulse thundering in my ears and the mystery pressing against my skin. The bundle was rough, wrapped in the same cloth Samuel had used to shield himself from cold nights. Its fibers scratched my fingertips, carrying the scent of damp alley air and smoke. He stood back, silent, waiting. His expression wasn't pleading, but resolute, as though handing me this object was inevitable. My hands trembled as I unwrapped it. A tarnished brass key tumbled out, followed by a folded slip of paper. The key was small, intricate, its surface etched with faint symbols that glimmered when caught by the lamplight. It wasn't an ordinary key. It felt crafted for a single deliberate purpose. The paper was yellowed and creased. I unfolded it carefully. Written in fading ink were the words, Warehouse 9B, Dockside Lane. Midnight. My breath hitched. Why me? What did Samuel expect me to find there? Was this some desperate plea, or something far more dangerous? When I looked at him, he didn't speak, only nodded once, firmly. Then he whispered, "You must go." His tone was pleading and commanding at once. That night, my apartment felt suffocating. I placed the key on my table, but it seemed to glow with significance, its weight pressing into my thoughts. I tried to sleep, but shadows twisted into questions. Could this be a trap? Could Samuel, who had nothing, be luring me into danger? Yet I remembered his trembling gratitude, the tokens he'd given me, the honesty in his eyes. Fear wrestled with curiosity. My logical mind told me to throw the key away, but my heart whispered that this was trust given form. By dawn, I had decided, I owed him more than bread. If he believed I could be the one to carry this, then I couldn't walk away. The day dragged on like a heavy chain. Every ticking clock reminded me of midnight. I tried to lose myself in work, but all I saw was Samuel's face, lined with fear and hope. At nightfall, I packed the key, the note, and a flashlight into my bag. My hand shook as I zipped it shut. Each motion felt like a point of no return. I left my apartment and walked through the misty streets. The city seemed different, emptier, darker, as though holding its breath for me. Dockside Lane lay at the far edge of town, where warehouses stood silent like forgotten guardians. Towering cranes and shipping containers loomed against the night sky, their shadows long and skeletal. At last, I saw it. Warehouse 9B. Its rusted metal door was ajar, as if waiting. My throat tightened. I gripped the key in my pocket, drawing strength from its cold weight. Inside, the warehouse stretched wide and hollow, its silence broken only by dripping water echoing through rafters. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, painting pale stripes across the floor. Crates and scaffolds lined the walls, but my eyes locked on a single cabinet at the far end. Its rusted padlock gleamed faintly. My pulse spiked. I knew this was where the key belonged. Kneeling, I pressed the key into the lock. It slid in smoothly, turning with an ease that chilled me. With a click, the shackle snapped open. I pulled the cabinet door wide. Inside lay photographs, aged documents, and a leather-bound journal embossed with the same crest etched on the key. My breath caught. This wasn't random junk. This was deliberate, preserved, hidden away for someone to find. For me to find. My hand reached for the journal, trembling with anticipation. As I reached for the journal, a sudden crash echoed behind me. I spun around, heart in my throat, to see Samuel stepping through the shadows, no longer ragged in blankets, but transformed, his eyes glowing with an unearthly light. He smiled, and in that moment, I understood. This was only the beginning of a journey that would shatter everything I thought I knew about kindness, power, and the thin line between them. The clock's ticking became a thunderstorm in my mind, each second pounding against my temples like thunder. Sleep slipped away as visions of locked doors and hidden destinies danced behind my eyelids, refusing to let me rest. By the time the city's lights dimmed, I was pacing my apartment in a fever of anticipation and dread. I couldn't sit still. From my window, I watched street lamps flicker on one by one, each halo cutting into the dark. My apartment, once a refuge, felt like a cage of shadows. The key rested in my palm, heavier than any metal should be. I turned it over again and again, tracing the carved lines as though answers might emerge. In my other hand, the note trembled. Warehouse 9B, Dockside Lane. Midnight. The words burned through me. My chest tightened. What if I destroyed them both, tossed them out the window and chose safety? But Samuel's eyes haunted me, steady and pleading. I couldn't betray that trust. In the kitchen, I poured water, but my shaking hand spilled it across the counter. Every drop echoed like a warning. You're not ready. I tried distracting myself with books, but the words blurred into nonsense. My mind kept circling back to Samuel, to the strange certainty in his voice when he said, "You must go." Who was he, really? A broken man on a street corner, or someone bound to secrets I couldn't yet grasp? My thoughts turned restless. I searched online for Dockside Lane. Records showed Warehouse 9B once held shipments until a fire forced its closure years ago. Since then, it had stood abandoned. Neighbors mentioned rumors, strange lights at night, whispers in empty halls. The more I read, the more I felt the key grow hotter in my grip, as though it had been waiting for me all along. I marked the address on a map, tracing possible paths. Every route felt like a descent into something I wasn't ready for. My chest ached with the weight of indecision. Fear clawed at me. What if this was a trap? What if I never returned? Yet guilt pressed harder. How could I deny Samuel when he had trusted me with this? By evening, my choice had been made. I packed my bag. Key, note, flashlight, gloves. Each item landed like a stone. At the door, I froze, hand on the knob. The urge to lock it again nearly overpowered me, but Samuel's hollow smile flickered in memory. I pushed forward. The night air hit me sharp and cold, heavy with mist. Streetlights shimmered in puddles as I walked. The city looked altered, stripped of its noise, its pretense. My phone read 11:40 p.m. My legs nearly buckled under the weight of dread, yet something steadier urged me on. The streets narrowed as I neared Dockside Lane. The warehouses loomed like sentinels of rust and silence, their broken windows, dark eyes watching me. I crouched behind wooden pallets, scanning the area. All was still, too still. My flashlight felt useless against the vast dark. Still, I gripped it like a weapon. The rusted door of Warehouse 9B loomed ahead, secured with a padlock. My pulse pounded. I slipped the key into place. It turned with a smoothness that chilled me. The lock released, metal clattering to the ground. The sound echoed too, loudly, bouncing across the silence like an alarm. My throat tightened. I pushed the door open. A rush of stale air met me, damp, metallic, alive with whispers that didn't belong. My flashlight beam cut into the dark, landing on shapes that shifted just beyond its edge. My breath caught. I wasn't alone. As I pushed the door open, a rush of stale air and distant whispers greeted me, voices that didn't belong to the empty night. My flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, landing on shapes that shifted just beyond its reach. Before I could step inside, a sudden scream split the air behind me. Raw, desperate, and achingly familiar. I spun around, heart in my throat, to see a shadowy figure dash into the alley, disappearing as quickly as it came. My world tilted on its axis. I was no longer alone, and whatever lay ahead wasn't just a mystery. It was a chase I hadn't signed up for. Every step toward that desolate building tightened the knot in my chest, as if the cold night air itself conspired to squeeze the last of my courage away. Moonlight spilled over fractured asphalt and tangled weeds, illuminating rusted gates that groaned in protest with each hesitant push. In my hand, the flashlight trembled like a living thing, its beam a fragile tether to whatever lay beyond. The gate moaned when I leaned my shoulder against it, flakes of rust crumbling under my palm. The sound split the silence, echoing across the empty yard like a warning. I froze, listening for any response, but the night remained still, only the distant hiss of the tide breaking against unseen docks. Gravel shifted beneath my boots, sharp stones scattering like startled insects. Each step seemed too loud, as though the warehouse itself was aware of my approach. I lifted my flashlight higher, the beam carving thin tunnels through the gloom. The yard was littered with debris, shattered bottles, coils of rusted wire, the skeletal remains of machines left to rot. The smell was a mix of oil, damp wood, and something older, like time itself had been left here to decay. I paused often, convinced I heard footsteps shadowing mine. Once, I swung the beam sharply behind me, only to find empty space. My mind whispered doubts. Was I chasing Samuel's secret, or walking into someone's trap? The looming building rose above me like a cathedral of ruin. Broken windows gaped like hollow eyes, their shards glinting faintly in the moonlight. Steel beams protruded at odd angles, skeletal ribs of a forgotten giant. I pressed my palm against the cold wall, grounding myself. The surface was damp, slick with moss in some places. My breath clouded the air, then vanished into the night as quickly as my resolve seemed to waver. Inside, the cavernous space yawned open. My flashlight beam swung across support columns wrapped in shadows, scaffolds draped in cobwebs, crates stacked like tombstones. Dust motes floated lazily through the air, caught in the weak shafts of moonlight filtering through jagged glass. Each step echoed unnaturally, magnified in the emptiness. Between those echoes, I swore I heard other sounds. A faint shuffle, a breath not my own. My chest tightened. "Samuel?" I whispered, but only silence answered. A faded stencil on a far wall caught my eye. 9B, the very mark from the note. My stomach lurched. This was no coincidence. This place had been chosen deliberately. Moving closer, I noticed graffiti scrawled across the walls. Some were simple names, but others were warnings. "Stay away. Not yours. They're watching." My hand brushed over the peeling paint, and for a moment it felt as though voices from the past were pressing into me. At the far end of the hall stood a door, scarred by rust and time. Its lock was intact, though the metal seemed almost polished, unlike the decay around it. My pulse hammered. I knew instantly this was what the key was meant for. I retrieved the key from my pocket. The grooves felt familiar now, as though they had carved themselves into my skin. My fingers shook as I slid it into the lock. For a terrifying moment it stuck, but then the tumblers turned with a soft, deliberate click. My breath caught. I pulled the door slowly, hinges screaming as it opened. My flashlight beam wavered across the floor until it landed on a sight that froze me. The room inside was barren. No crates, no debris, just a single stone pedestal in the center, glowing faintly as though lit from within. The glow pulsed, soft but steady, illuminating the chamber in a pale radiance. It was impossible, unnatural, yet undeniably real. My instincts screamed to retreat, to slam the door and run, but the pull of that glow was stronger. Each step I took forward felt less like choice and more like compulsion. My skin prickled as I crossed the threshold. The air was warmer here, humming faintly as though charged with electricity. I circled the pedestal slowly, its smooth marble surface alive with silvery veins that shimmered when touched by my light. At its base was an engraving, an emblem I recognized instantly. It was the same crest embossed on Samuel's tokens, the same symbol etched into the key. My heart pounded. This was no accident. Kneeling, I laid my palm against the pedestal. It was warm to the touch, unnaturally so. A vibration traveled up my arm, steady and rhythmic, syncing with my pulse until I could no longer tell which belonged to me. My flashlight dimmed as if cowed by the glow. The shadows around me retreated, but I felt no safer. Instead, I felt as though I was standing on the edge of something vast, something I was never meant to see. I whispered Samuel's name again, but the chamber swallowed my voice. I rose slowly, heart pounding, as the light pulsed in response to my touch, casting my elongated shadow behind me like a guardian or a warning. Before I could gather my wits, a distant click echoed from the far wall, a second door swinging open, revealing a figure standing in darkness. The figure's silhouette was unmistakably familiar, yet impossibly changed, and as it stepped toward me, the light flickered, revealing eyes that burned with a truth I was not prepared to face. I swore I felt the air hum with unseen energy, as if the very molecules around me were vibrating in anticipation. The pedestal's glow pulsed against my retinas, and my skin tingled, caught between awe and dread. Every instinct screamed to flee, but my feet remained rooted, drawn toward a secret older than memory. I stepped closer, my flashlight drooping uselessly at my side. The pedestal's light outshone its beam, casting silver ripples across the floor. Veins of luminescence ran through the marble, alive as though the stone itself carried a heartbeat. The glow was neither harsh nor soft. It was commanding, pulling me in. I circled slowly, fingertips brushing its warm surface. The stone was smoother than glass, but heat radiated from it, spreading through my skin like fire disguised as comfort. Tiny runes etched beneath its rim pulsed faintly. I leaned in, tracing their grooves, and realized the symbols matched those carved into the key Samuel had given me. My chest tightened. This was no random artifact. Samuel had led me here for a reason. Around the pedestal's base, a shallow groove marked a perfect circle in the floor, worn smooth as if touched countless times before. It whispered of rituals, of others who had knelt here long before me. I crouched, pressed my hand into the groove, and felt a tremor rise through my arm. The sensation was intimate, as if unseen voices were reaching through stone to acknowledge me. Rising again, I placed both palms atop the pedestal. Heat surged upward, coursing into my veins with alarming force. Behind my closed eyelids, colors exploded. Blue storms, golden rivers, sparks of violet fire. Whispers seeped into my ears, speaking in a language just beyond comprehension. I glimpsed flashes of figures bowing before this very stone, cloaked in robes, their faces hidden, but their reverence undeniable. A key slid into the pedestal, a hand lifted in oath, and light poured upward like a fountain. My breath caught, and I ripped my hands back. The glow dimmed slightly, almost disappointed. I staggered a step away, gripping my knees. My pulse was frantic, but the pedestal's hum synced with it as though urging me to continue. Forcing myself upright, I studied the engraving along its top rim. Words in curling script read, "To the one who gave without asking." The phrase pierced me. My mind flew back to the first night I offered bread, the tremor in Samuel's hands, his whispered, "Thank you." Could such a small act have carried me to this place? I closed my eyes again, letting memories flood me. Each night I had chosen to return. Each loaf, each word, each kindness. It all felt like stepping stones leading here. When I opened them, the glow had grown stronger. Dust swirled upward, suspended, like galaxies in miniature. The pedestal pulsed, anticipating something. My palms found their way back to its surface, and this time I did not resist. Energy rushed into me, hotter, sharper. My arms shook, but I held firm. The chamber erupted in radiance. Runic symbols flared alive, bathing the walls in shifting light. The grooves on the floor glowed, the circle blazing as though fire raced through its lines. My breath came in ragged gasps. The pedestal's warmth became nearly unbearable. I tried to wrench away, but my hands clung as if bound. Just then, the chamber door slammed shut behind me with a violent crack. The sound jarred my bones. Darkness pressed against the edges of light, swallowing every shadow in violent waves. My flashlight rolled across the floor, its beam powerless. The pedestal's glow flared again, surging to fill the room, illuminating a shape at the edge of vision. My skin prickled. I wasn't alone. Heart pounding, I turned, and realized I wasn't alone in the room. A tall figure stood just beyond the pedestal's glow, its silhouette sharp against the flickering shadows. Its head tilted as if pondering my presence, and then a hand emerged, long fingers tracing the air like a knife slicing through silence. The pedestal's light pulsed in response, and I knew, with a cold certainty, that my act of kindness had awoken something ancient, and it had eyes trained on me alone. In the dim glow of the pedestal's light, I first noticed the figure standing motionless in the corner, cloaked in tattered robes that hung like shadows against the stone walls. Its presence was heavier than the air itself, pressing in on me with a silent weight. My heart thundered as every instinct screamed that I was no longer alone. My breath stalled. The figure blended with the darkness, as though it had been standing there long before I entered, waiting for this exact moment. The robes draped to the ground, folds layered with an elegance that belied their frayed edges. Not dirt, not grime, just wear, as though time itself had tailored them. I raised my flashlight. The beam quivered against its chest, but the fabric seemed to absorb the light, swallowing brightness and giving nothing back. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper. My voice cracked, barely audible over the low hum of the pedestal. No answer came. The hood concealed its face entirely. Darkness pooled where eyes should have been. That absence struck me harder than any stare could. It felt like being judged by nothingness itself. A tremor ran down my spine. I took a step closer, then froze when the figure's hand rose. The sleeve fell back, revealing slender fingers etched with age and marked by faint scars. In its palm lay another key, smaller than Samuel's, silver instead of brass, engraved with the same runes that glowed beneath the pedestal's rim. My heart hammered. It extended the key toward me, slow and deliberate, as though daring me to accept. I stretched out my shaking hand, my flashlight nearly slipping from my grip. The metal was shockingly cold when it touched my skin, as if it had been carved from ice. Yet the runes burned faintly, pulsing like embers stirred awake. The pedestal reacted instantly. Light rippled down its shaft, pooling at its base. With a low groan, a seam cracked open in the stone floor, revealing a hidden compartment. I gasped, crouching instinctively. The figure stayed silent, unmoving, as though it had merely played its part in a script written centuries ago. The compartment yawned open, lined with dark velvet. Nestled inside was a small glass jar, sealed with wax. My flashlight beam bounced across its curves, catching on liquid that shimmered within, colors shifting from emerald green to sapphire blue, flecked with gold that drifted like stars in a night sky. My chest heaved. I reached out, brushing the seal. The jar vibrated faintly under my touch, humming with restrained energy. One by one, the wax seals cracked as I pulled them free. The chamber filled with a faint scent, floral, metallic, ancient. I lifted the lid and gasped at the glow rising from the liquid. It wasn't ordinary light. It pulsed as though alive, each wave syncing with my heartbeat. A vial of pure radiance, small enough to cradle, powerful enough to terrify. Behind me, the pedestal dimmed. its glow bending toward the jar as though bowing in reverence. My knees weakened under the weight of the realization. This was no mere relic. This was essence, distilled power, a gift, or a weapon. My throat tightened. "What is this?" I whispered to the robed figure. Finally it moved. The hood tilted downward, then upward again, as though measuring me. Its lips parted, and for the first time, sound emerged. A voice so low it seemed to rumble from the stone itself. "Drink," it commanded. One word, sharp and final. My stomach lurched. My hands shook, clutching the vial tighter. Drink? Consume something that glowed like bottled starlight? I shook my head, backing a step. "I don't even know what this is." The witness raised a single finger to its lips, silencing me. Then it pointed, not at the vial, not at me, but at the pedestal. The runes glowed again, pulsing in rhythm with my racing pulse. I understood the message. This was destiny, whether I wished it or not. My legs trembled. Sweat slicked my palms. I felt the air thicken, heavy with expectation. The chamber itself seemed to hold its breath. I looked back at the figure. Its hood dipped, almost a nod. A gesture of insistence, but not cruelty. My lips parted, heart hammering so hard it hurt. Could I really drink? Would it kill me? Or awaken something I wasn't prepared for? When I lifted the lid, I gasped at the object inside. A vial of shimmering liquid that seemed to pulse with ancient power. The witness's robe rustled as it stepped forward, eyes burning with unspoken expectations. I felt the elixir's warmth draw me closer, promising revelation, and possibly ruin. With my heart racing, I realized the final choice was mine. To drink and reshape my destiny, or let the secret slip back into shadow. The liquid inside pulsed like captured starlight, as though countless galaxies had been distilled into that slender glass vessel. Its glow bathed my skin in shifting hues of emerald and sapphire, and I swore I could feel the rhythm of distant suns beating against my palm. In that suspended moment, the entire world narrowed to the quivering promise held within. I held the vial aloft, its glow casting waves of color across the chamber's stone walls. Every fleck of gold shimmered like a star suspended in the night sky, swirling slowly in the strange liquid. It wasn't just beautiful. It was alive. My hands trembled as I turned it gently, watching the liquid shift, forming spirals that coiled like galaxies. I swore I heard faint hums emanating from it, vibrations too soft to be sound, but too real to ignore. The robed figure's voice echoed inside me again, though its lips didn't move. "Drink, to know your purpose." The command was calm, yet absolute, searing itself into my bones. My breath quickened. The idea of consuming such a substance felt absurd, dangerous. My mind conjured worst-case visions, my body burning from within, my soul unraveling. Yet another part of me yearned for it, compelled by a force I couldn't explain. Samuel's face flashed before me, his trembling gratitude when I first offered him bread. His words from that night, "It's time, friend," now carried new meaning. Had he known this moment awaited me all along? My throat tightened as I pulled at the wax seal. It gave way with a soft crack, releasing a sudden burst of fragrance. Sweet, earthy, metallic. It smelled like spring rain colliding with ancient fire. I brought the vial close to my lips, pausing, my reflection distorted in the glass. Fear wrestled with curiosity in my eyes. With a trembling hand, I tipped the vial. A single golden drop touched my tongue. The taste exploded. Sunlight, storm, sweetness, fire. My entire body convulsed as warmth surged down my throat, igniting my chest. It wasn't pain, but it was overwhelming, like being remade from within. My arms tingled, my fingertips sparked with invisible currents. My knees buckled, and I gripped the pedestal to keep from collapsing. The light from the vial flared, filling the chamber with brilliance so pure it banished every shadow. My vision blurred into colors beyond comprehension. Violet rivers, golden storms, shapes of constellations spinning across my mind. I saw the universe itself unfolding, stars born and dying, galaxies spiraling, histories written and erased. My senses heightened. I could hear the stone humming beneath my feet, could feel the slow heartbeat of the pedestal, could sense the robed figure's silent approval, radiating like heat. I gasped, clutching. The vile more drops spilled across my lips, and the warmth intensified, coursing through veins, now alight with energy. The chamber no longer looked the same. Its walls glowed with runes invisible before, words flowing in languages I suddenly understood. They spoke of guardians, of vows sworn by countless others before me. The liquid burned brighter within the vial, though I had consumed half already. It wasn't draining. It was replenishing itself, endless as the cosmos it seemed to contain. My pulse synchronized with the hum of the room. My body was no longer just flesh. It felt like a vessel of light, woven into something far greater than my solitary existence. A sob tore from my throat. Not of pain, but awe. The gift or curse within this vial was rewriting me, breaking and remaking me with every heartbeat. I turned to the robed figure. Its hood concealed its features, but I sensed its gaze, ancient and unyielding. My lips trembled. "What have you done to me?" Silence answered first, then a whisper. "You were chosen long before you knew kindness." My knees gave way. I fell, catching myself on trembling hands, light spilling from my pores in faint glimmers. The robed figure stepped closer, its shadow twisting in the glow. The pedestal pulsed in unison with my breath. I realized then that I wasn't dying. I was awakening. Yet amid the wonder, dread clung to me. Power came with cost. Every story, every whisper from the pedestal spoke of sacrifice. My chest heaved. The last drops of liquid slid down my throat, sealing the transformation. The vial grew suddenly empty, its glass dimming, turning inert in my hand. Its purpose fulfilled. I dropped it. It shattered on the floor, its pieces scattering like fragments of fallen stars. The sound echoed, final and irreversible. Darkness surged, swallowing the glow for a heartbeat before it returned. Steadier, but changed. The power was no longer in the vial. It lived in me. My body felt different, stronger, sharper, attuned to the quiet vibrations of the world. I could sense distant footsteps, hear whispers carried on the wind outside. I could even feel Samuel, somewhere beyond, tethered to me. Yet a weight pressed on my soul. I understood instinctively. This was no gift freely given. It was a mantle, a responsibility heavy as stone. If I faltered, the light could twist, corrupt, destroy. The chamber trembled faintly. Dust rained from the ceiling. The pedestal dimmed, its task complete, as though bowing in acknowledgement of a torch passed. I looked at the robed figure one last time. Its hood dipped low, in approval, or perhaps in warning. Then the light flickered violently. My chest clenched, my knees hit the floor. My vision blackened. And then everything went black. The pedestal's light collapsed in an instant, plunging me into a void so complete I felt the echo of my own heartbeat fading into silence. When vision returned, I stood at the warehouse threshold, empty vial in hand, key still burning hot against my pocket, and knew with chilling certainty that the real test had yet to begin. I fell into a dream that felt more real than life itself, as though the boundaries of flesh and stone had dissolved beneath my eyelids. Endless vistas unfolded before me, each more vivid than memory, pulling me deeper into a realm where time had no purchase. My heart raced with an exhilaration that bordered on terror, for I knew I was witnessing something vast and irrevocable. At first I stood on a barren plateau swept by furious winds. 2 moons hung above, casting violet light across jagged stone spires. The air smelled of smoke and incense, and the ground trembled as if remembering battles long past. In the distance, cities of obsidian and ivory rose, their towers crowned with banners that flapped in silence. Dark-robed figures moved along their corridors, faces hidden, hands clasped in ritual prayer. My feet carried me forward without command. A staircase spiraled upward into the heavens, each step carved from meteorite glass. With every stride, the stairs chimed softly, music that seemed to stir the stars themselves. Halfway up, I paused to look down. The city stretched infinitely, folding into itself like mirrored reflections. 1,000 courtyards, 1,000 alleys, all repeating, each echoing the other in impossible patterns. My stomach lurched at the vastness. Yet the pull upward was irresistible. I climbed, step by step, until I reached a circle of luminous figures cloaked in robes that glowed faintly with inner fire. They turned toward me in unison. Their voices rose, not loud, but resonant, a hymn that bypassed my ears and struck directly at my soul. They spoke my name. Hearing it on their lips felt like a bell, tolling across centuries, binding me to a destiny I had never asked for, but could no longer refuse. A mantle of weight settled on my shoulders. These were the guardians before me, souls who had once borne the same light, now coursing through my veins. I was not the first. I would not be the last. The vision shifted, pulling me downward. I stood at the edge of a precipice so high the bottom vanished into mist. The wind whispered my doubts. Are you strong enough? Will you falter as others have? I felt crushed beneath unseen expectations, yet a voice steadied me. Every act of kindness lights the path. Remember, the scene dissolved into shadow. I now wandered catacombs carved deep beneath the earth, walls lined with glowing inscriptions. Names shimmered faintly on the stone, each fading as I passed. My fingers brushed the etchings, and with each touch I felt lives. Beggars, kings, mothers, warriors, all who had carried the light before me. Their hope surged into me, mingling with my own fear. I wasn't alone. I was part of a chain stretching across centuries. Then came the final vision. I stood once more before the pedestal, but it had transformed, no longer simple stone, but a grand altar of crystal and obsidian, its glow brighter than the sun. Kneeling at its base was Samuel, but not the Samuel I had known. Gone were the blankets, the hollow cheeks. He wore robes stitched with constellations, his eyes blazing with serenity. In his outstretched hands he held a crown wrought of moonstone and starlight. My breath hitched. He lifted it toward me, whispering, "For you, guardian." The words reverberated like a vow. I reached out, trembling, to take it. Just before my fingers brushed the crown, the vision shattered like glass. I gasped and stumbled, finding myself once more on the windswept plateau, moons glaring overhead, the echo of Samuel's voice lingering in the air. The staircase, the city, the catacombs, all dissolved into swirling darkness. I fell, tumbling through void, clutching at nothing. My heart thundered until the ground rose up to meet me. My eyes flew open. I lay on the dusty floor of the warehouse chamber, shards of the shattered vial glinting around me like broken stars. My lungs heaved, chest aching as though I'd truly plummeted. My hand clenched tightly around something cold. Slowly, I opened my palm. There, impossibly real, rested a golden circlet etched with runes, the very crown from my vision. I woke with a start, the vial shattered at my feet, and a golden crown in my hand, its points etched with the same runes I had seen in my dreams. My heart pounded as I lifted it to the dim warehouse light, each facet catching a glimmer of moonlit promise. Who had placed it there? And why had my dream made it manifest in waking flesh? My world had shifted again, and I knew with bone-deep certainty that there was no escaping the path now laid before me. I fell into a dream that felt more real than life itself, as though the boundaries of flesh and stone had dissolved beneath my eyelids. Endless vistas unfolded before me, each more vivid than memory, pulling me deeper into a realm where time had no purchase. My heart raced with an exhilaration that bordered on terror, for I knew I was witnessing something vast and irrevocable. At first, I stood on a barren plateau swept by furious winds. 2 moons hung above, casting violet light across jagged stone spires. The air smelled of smoke and incense, and the ground trembled as if remembering battles long past. In the distance, cities of obsidian and ivory rose, their towers crowned with banners that flapped in silence. Dark-robed figures moved along their corridors, faces hidden, hands clasped in ritual prayer. My feet carried me forward without command. A staircase spiraled upward into the heavens, each step carved from meteorite glass. With every stride, the stairs chimed softly, music that seemed to stir the stars themselves. Halfway up, I paused to look down. The city stretched infinitely, folding into itself like mirrored reflections. 1,000 courtyards, 1,000 alleys, all repeating, each echoing the other in impossible patterns. My stomach lurched at the vastness, yet the pull upward was irresistible. I climbed, step by step, until I reached a circle of luminous figures cloaked in robes that glowed faintly with inner fire. They turned toward me in unison. Their voices rose, not loud, but resonant, a hymn that bypassed my ears and struck directly at my soul. They spoke my name. Hearing it on their lips felt like a bell tolling across centuries, binding me to a destiny I had never asked for, but could no longer refuse. A mantle of weight settled on my shoulders. These were the guardians before me, souls who had once borne the same light now coursing through my veins. I was not the first. I would not be the last. The vision shifted, pulling me downward. I stood at the edge of a precipice so high the bottom vanished into mist. The wind whispered my doubts. Are you strong enough? Will you falter as others have? I felt crushed beneath unseen expectations, yet a voice steadied me. Every act of kindness lights the path. Remember? The scene dissolved into shadow. I now wandered catacombs carved deep beneath the earth, walls lined with glowing inscriptions. Names shimmered faintly on the stone, each fading as I passed. My fingers brushed the etchings, and with each touch I felt lives. Beggars, kings, mothers, warriors, all who had carried the light before me. Their hope surged into me, mingling with my own fear. I wasn't alone. I was part of a chain stretching across centuries. Then came the final vision. I stood once more before the pedestal, but it had transformed, no longer simple stone, but a grand altar of crystal and obsidian, its glow brighter than the sun. Kneeling at its base was Samuel, but not the Samuel I had known. Gone were the blankets, the hollow cheeks. He wore robes stitched with constellations, his eyes blazing with serenity. In his outstretched hands he held a crown, wrought of moonstone and starlight. My breath hitched. He lifted it toward me, whispering, "For you, guardian." The words reverberated like a vow. I reached out, trembling, to take it. Just before my fingers brushed the crown, the vision shattered like glass. I gasped and stumbled, finding myself once more on the wind-swept plateau, moons glaring overhead, the echo of Samuel's voice lingering in the air. The staircase, the city, the catacombs, all dissolved into swirling darkness. I fell, tumbling through void, clutching at nothing. My heart thundered until the ground rose up to meet me. My eyes flew open. I lay on the dusty floor of the warehouse chamber, shards of the shattered vial glinting around me like broken stars. My lungs heaved, chest aching as though I'd truly plummeted. My hand clenched tightly around something cold. Slowly I opened my palm. There, impossibly real, rested a golden circlet etched with runes, the very crown from my vision. I woke with a start, the vial shattered at my feet, and a golden crown in my hand, its points etched with the same runes I had seen in my dreams. My heart pounded as I lifted it to the dim warehouse light, each facet catching a glimmer of moonlit promise. Who had placed it there, and why had my dream made it manifest in waking flesh? My world had shifted again, and I knew with bone-deep certainty that there was no escaping the path now laid before me. I had become what I never imagined, a keeper of secrets and light, bound by ancient oaths to safeguard a power older than any kingdom. The weight of the crown pressed down upon my brow, and in that pressure I felt both the immense burden and the exhilarating promise of purpose. In the silent gleam of dawn, I realized my life had diverged from every path I had known. There would be no returning to ordinary days. The first lesson struck quickly. The crown was not merely ornament, not merely symbol. It was a weight, pressing not on my head alone, but on my soul. With every heartbeat, I felt the echoes of those who had carried it before me. Their whispers lingered, reminders of victories won, but also of failures that had cost dearly. I came to understand that the light was fragile, not fragile like glass, but like fire, able to warm, heal, and inspire, yet just as capable of burning if left untended. Its brilliance depended on my stewardship. Samuel, my unlikely guide, began to instruct me. We met in hidden chambers beneath the city's streets, far from prying eyes. By lantern glow, he told me of guardians who had faltered, lured by pride, by fear, or by the temptation to wield the light as a weapon. His voice was patient, but each word carried weight like stone. To carry the crown is to protect it from others, and from yourself. My chest tightened whenever he spoke those words. I thought back to the night I first hesitated to share bread, when selfishness almost outweighed compassion. Had I been tested, even then? Had the crown been watching? The days became weeks, and Samuel led me through trials that pushed me to my limits. The first trial came in the form of a wraith, a creature born of despair that stalked the city park at twilight. Its form was smoke and shadow, its voice a chorus of regrets. When it whispered my failures, moments when I turned away from suffering, times when I let fear dictate my choices, I nearly collapsed. But the crown pulsed with warmth, reminding me of Samuel's smile, of the bread that had changed us both. I stood firm, channeling its radiance into a beam of light that cut through the wraith's illusions. With a cry, it dissolved, leaving the park free of its curse. I realized then that the crown thrived not on force, but on forgiveness. The second trial was subtler, yet harder. In the abandoned museum's labyrinth of halls, illusions bloomed wherever I walked. Paintings came alive, showing me a version of myself draped in glory, adored, unquestioned, triumphant. Statues whispered promises of dominion, of ruling with the crown as my unquestioned weapon. My chest ached with longing. The temptation was strong. But the truth Samuel had spoken rang louder. The crown must never serve pride. I whispered aloud my unworthiness, confessed my fear of failure. The illusions cracked, then vanished, leaving only silence and my ragged breath. The third trial tested not strength or humility, but compassion. A fever swept through the poorest quarter of the city. Samuel and I stumbled into a makeshift clinic where children lay gasping on splintered beds, their parents hollow-eyed with despair. My crown pulsed with urgency. I knelt beside a frail boy, his forehead burning. I placed my hand on his skin, and light flowed from me, not violent, but gentle, wrapping him in warmth. His breath steadied, color returning faintly to his cheeks. One by one, I moved among them, giving all I could. The strain nearly broke me. Each act drained me further until I staggered. But I pressed on, knowing every spark mattered. When dawn came, the fever broke. Parents wept with gratitude. My body ached, but my heart felt lighter than it ever had. I understood then. The crown's power was not for grand gestures alone. It was for the smallest lives, the forgotten ones. Each trial changed me. I began to see the city differently. From rooftops, I gazed down at its streets, not as an observer, but as a guardian. Every lantern flame was a life I had sworn to protect. Every shadow was a threat I must anticipate. Yet whispers reached me. Dark rumors carried on the wind. A movement was rising in secret, hungering for the crown. Agents hid among merchants and laborers. Foreign tongues whispered of alchemy that could twist the crown's light into a weapon of terror. My chest clenched with dread. I realized that compassion and courage would not be enough. A storm was coming, one that would test not just my resolve, but the very balance between light and shadow. But shadows were stirring, forces that knew of the crown's power and hungered for it. In the hush before dawn, I felt the city tremble beneath my feet as dark shapes converged beyond the distant rooftops. The watchers in the alleys ceased their patrols, and the wind carried a sinister promise. The next trial would not test my courage or compassion alone, but demand every ounce of strength I could muster. And I, guardian of light, stood ready to confront the coming storm. Rumors of dark agents reached my ears like whispers in a gathering storm, faint at first, then swelling into a clamorous roar that rattled my resolve. Through the haze of dawn's first light, I felt an electric tension crackle through the city air, heralding the approach of unseen forces. The crown's hum had grown urgent, a heartbeat matching my own fear and determination. At first, it was whispers. A merchant at the docks swore he saw cloaked figures inspecting crates at midnight. A seamstress found scraps of fabric embroidered with strange runes in the marketplace. A child claimed he saw eyes glowing red in the alleys near the river. Alone, they might have been dismissed as rumor. Together, they painted a picture too sharp to ignore. Shadows were moving, and they were moving toward me. Samuel and I gathered those who had once walked unseen through the city, the beggars I had fed, the couriers who darted across rooftops, the forgotten who had nothing but loyalty left to give. In a damp alley, lit only by a flickering lantern, they assembled. Their faces were gaunt, their clothes patched, but their eyes burned with resolve. These were not warriors by trade, but by necessity. Each carried something: knives hidden in boots, bottles of oil that could be fire, even slings made from rags. I spoke to them, my voice low but steady. The crown is not mine alone. Its light belongs to every soul who refuses to kneel to darkness. If you fight not for me, but for the city, for each other. They nodded, silent but firm. In that silence, I felt more power than in any army's roar. We built a network in days. Couriers mapped secret paths through the rooftops. Watchers stationed themselves in alleys, disguised as beggars, but with eyes sharp as blades. Musicians in taverns passed coded messages through songs. The city itself became our ally. Every corner, every shadow, every rooftop turned into ground we knew better than our enemies ever could. And still, the whispers grew louder. Samuel brought news of strangers buying iron in bulk. The couriers reported supplies hidden in warehouses. The beggars saw symbols carved into door frames, marks of allegiance to a power that hunted me. One night, in a forgotten chapel, I stood with Samuel and the council of ragged allies. Maps lay before us, marked with circles where sightings had clustered. Every mark inched closer to the docks, closer to Warehouse 9B, the place where this had begun. They want the crown, Samuel said simply. They will not stop until they have it. My hands clenched around the table. Then they will have to break us first. Preparations began. We trained in secrecy, blades against blades, light against shadow. I taught them what I had learned from the crown, how to hold steady when fear clawed, how to channel resolve when strength waned. Samuel moved among them like a quiet flame, steadying hands and hardening wills. The night of the first strike came swift. Mist curled low across the warehouses, shrouding everything in eerie silence. I led the watchers into place, crouched among stacks of timber. Couriers perched on rooftops, bows at the ready. A single torch flared in the distance. Then came the sound, the crunch of boots. Dozens, then hundreds. Shadows emerged, cloaked and armed, their banners stitched with runes that writhed in the torchlight. Behind them, carts creaked under the weight of something heavier than mere supplies. My pulse thundered. I touched the crown, feeling its warmth spread through my chest. I whispered the command we had practiced. Now. Lanterns hidden among the crates burst, a light flooding the docks with sudden brilliance. Couriers unleashed volleys of arrows tipped with fire. Watchers rose from the shadows, blades flashing. The enemy reeled, their careful stealth shattered. Cries split the night as steel clashed against steel, as shadows met the light we had kindled. I surged forward, the crown blazing. Its glow became a shield, wrapping my allies in warmth, deflecting blows meant to cut them down. With each strike, I whispered words Samuel had taught me, weaving protection not just over myself, but over those who fought beside me. The battle was chaos, fire against fog, light against shadow. But for every agent we felled, more slipped from the mist, relentless, determined. My arms burned with exhaustion, yet the crown hummed stronger, feeding me, urging me to press on. And then, amid the clash, I saw him, their leader. A towering figure, face hidden behind a mask of iron, sword etched with runes that twisted the very light around it. His gaze locked on me, unyielding. He raised his blade in silent challenge. My heart clenched. This was no ordinary enemy. This was the storm itself given flesh. As flames leapt skyward behind me, I realized the invaders had one goal: the crown. Beyond the circle of our defenses, dark figures gathered at the city's perimeter, their eyes fixed on me as the crown's bearer. And in the crackling firelight, I understood the true test lay ahead, not merely in battle, but in safeguarding the light against those who would wield it as a weapon, rather than a beacon. I clenched my jaw, steeled my heart, and prepared to face the storm's next howl. The final battle began under a sky painted crimson by fire, as smoke curled upward like dark fingers clutching at the stars. Flames roared in every street, their heat a living thing that licked at my armor of light, testing the strength of my resolve. In that apocalyptic glow, I felt the crown's power surge through every vein, as though the very essence of the city had knitted itself into my bones. I stood at the ruined steps of the Parliament building, crown ablaze, the city's militia and my ragged council gathered behind me. Their faces were streaked with ash, but their eyes burned with defiance. The storm had come, and we stood in its heart. The enemy advanced like a tide of shadows, ranks of cloaked agents, armor glinting black, swords etched with runes that shimmered like venom. Their leader marched at the center, his iron mask catching the firelight, his sword radiating a void that seemed to drink the very glow around it. I raised my hand, and the crown pulsed. A wave of light swept through our lines, steadying knees, filling weary lungs, hardening resolve. My allies lifted their blades and staffs, their cries piercing the roar of fire. The two sides collided with a crash that shook the very streets. Steel rang, arrows whistled, fire burst into the sky. I met the leader's gaze across the chaos and surged forward, crown blazing brighter with every step. His sword met mine with a strike that rattled my bones. The void in his blade clawed at my light, threatening to consume it. My arms trembled, but I stood firm. Every memory of kindness, every loaf of bread, every hand I had held, fed the crown's radiance. I pushed back, sparks flying. Around us the battle raged. Couriers rained arrows from rooftops, their signals guiding ambushes in narrow alleys. Beggars turned guardians fought with blades and fire, every strike fueled by years of forgotten suffering. Samuel moved like a flame, his staff glowing as he channeled the light into those faltering. Yet the enemy was relentless. For every agent that fell, Another pressed forward. Their chants rose in unison, a dark hymn that sought to drown the crown's song. My chest burned with fear that we might be swallowed whole. I closed my eyes and remembered the wraith I had banished with forgiveness, the fevered children whose lives the crown had mended, the simple spark of hope in Samuel's eyes. The crown flared in response, reminding me that light was never mine alone. It was shared. I channeled that truth outward. Waves of warmth spread across the battlefield, disarming foes, softening hardened hearts. Some enemies staggered, their blades falling as tears cut through soot-stained cheeks. Others fell to their knees, undone not by force, but by compassion, too deep to resist. But the leader pressed on. His strikes grew wilder, fueled by fury. His sword carved arcs of darkness that split the ground, swallowing fire and light alike. I felt the crown shudder under the strain, its hum faltering. My knees buckled, and the void pressed closer. In desperation, I summoned the last memory I had of the vial, the shimmering liquid that had remade me. I held out my hand, and shards of its broken glass rose from the ground, glowing once more with echoes of starlight. They swirled around me, forming a sphere of brilliance that wrapped my body in living armor. With a cry, I thrust my palm forward. The shards converged into a spear of light that pierced the leader's chest. His mask cracked, his sword faltered, and for the first time, I saw his eyes. Wide, human, filled not with malice, but with grief. His blade fell. His body dissolved into shadow, carried away by the wind. Silence rippled outward. The remaining agents froze, their chants faltering. One by one their weapons fell, their cloaks disintegrating into ash. What remained were only people, tired, broken, bewildered, freed from the shadow's hold. Flames sputtered. The battle's roar dwindled into quiet. My allies lowered their weapons, their eyes lifting toward me. The crown glowed steady and soft, its power no longer raging, but flowing gently, like a river after flood. Survivors emerged from hiding, children clinging to mothers, merchants clutching one another, elders weeping openly. They approached us not with fear, but with reverence. Some knelt. Others simply reached out, brushing fingers against the light as though to be sure it was real. I removed the crown and held it aloft, its glow spilling across the ruins. This city belongs not to shadows, nor to crowns, but to all who choose compassion, I said, my voice carrying through the smoke. We are its guardians, together. A cheer rose, ragged, hoarse, but full of life. My council embraced one another. Samuel's eyes glistened as he placed a steady hand on my shoulder. That night, the city healed. Neighbors tended wounds together. Fires became hearths, songs replaced screams. Children laughed again, their voices carrying into the dawn. I climbed the city wall as the sun rose, crown still warm in my hands. Below me, the streets bustled with renewal. Pain lingered, but so did hope. I knew the fight was not over. Darkness always waits at the edges. But for now, we had triumphed. And as dawn's first light touched my face, the crown whispered one final truth. Guardianship was not victory, nor power. It was vigilance, compassion, and sacrifice. Always. As dawn broke, I stood above the crowds, whispering, "This is only the beginning." Behind me, the city stirred with new purpose, but beyond the walls, shadows gathered anew, silent conspirators plotting to reclaim the crown's light for themselves. And in their blackened hearts, a vow formed. The Guardian may have triumphed today, but tomorrow, the true test would come. If you've been captivated by this adventure, smash that like button to let me know. Hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next chapter of our epic tale. Drop a comment below, telling me which twist left you speechless and what you think happens next. Share this video with friends who crave mystery and magic, and let's grow our community of storytellers together. Stay tuned. Your journey as a guardian is just beginning.